This math lesson comes from Chapter 5, Lesson 6, where we're going to look at dividing decimals, so dividing a decimal by a decimal. So let's look at some example problems. Our first problem is 56 hundredths divided by 7 tenths. So remember, my 56 hundredths is my dividend, and my 7 tenths is my divisor. So our first step is to multiply the divisor by a power of 10 to make it a whole number. So I want to try and get rid of this decimal point from my divisor. So I know that I can multiply this by 10. I can move that decimal point one time to the right. So that's multiplying it by 10 to make it the whole number 7. So I'm going to do the same thing now to the dividends. My second step is to multiply the dividend by the same power of 10 that you did for the divisor. So I'm going to multiply this, the 56 hundredths, by 10. So that means I'm moving my decimal point one time because I only have 1 0. So my new dividend is 5 6 tenths. So now I can solve this because my divisor needs to be a whole number. I cannot use a decimal as my divisor. So when I rewrite this now, remember my dividend goes under the house, 5 6 tenths, and my divisor, which is now 7, goes on the outside. This number has to be a whole number, which is why we have to do these steps to make this divisor a whole number. So remember, when we do decimal division, our first step then is to bring this decimal point straight up. And then I can forget about the decimal point and just think of it as 56 divided by 7. So I cannot do 5 divided by 7, so I need to look at 56 divided by 7. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a math fact. What number times 7 is 56? And I know that that number is 8. Now my next step in division is to multiply. 8 times 7 is 56. Then I subtract, and I get 0. And I check. I cannot do 0 divided by 7, and I have nothing else to bring down. So my answer is 8 tenths. Let's look at another one. 3 72 hundredths divided by 1 2 tenths. My divisor is a decimal, 1 2 tenths. I need to make it not a decimal. And then whatever I do to my divisor, I need to do the same thing to my dividend, the 3 72 hundredths. So look at step 1. First, multiply the divisor by a power of 10 to make it a whole number. That could be multiplying it by 10, 100, 1,000, whatever I need to multiply it by to make it a whole number. So I know that I need to really move my decimal point one time. So when I move it one time, that's telling me that I just multiplied it by 10. So when I did 1 2 tenths times 10, my new divisor is 12. So my second step is to multiply the dividend by the same power of 10 that you did for the divisor. Well, I multiplied it by 10, which meant I moved my decimal point one time to the right because I wanted it to be a larger number. So I'm going to do the exact same thing to my dividend. I'm going to move my decimal point one time, which meant I multiplied it by 10. So now my new dividend is 37 2 tenths. And my third step is now I can divide. So my dividend goes under the house, 37 2 tenths. And on the outside is my divisor, 12. And the whole reason we have to do all these steps is because my divisor cannot be a decimal. It has to be a whole number. So I need to kind of find equivalent numbers, move my decimal points to allow that to happen. So now, since this is a decimal division problem, my next step is to bring my decimal point up and then forget all about the decimal. So now I'm just thinking of it as 372 divided by 12. And I'm thinking in my head, can 12 go into 3? Can 3 be divided by 12? No. So now I need to think of it as 37. 37 divided by 12 is what? How many times can 12 go into 37 without going over? So 12 times what will get me really close to 37? Well, I know that answer is 3. And since I'm looking at 37, I'm putting my number over the 7. So now I multiply. 3 times 12 is 36. Subtract. 7 minus 6 is 1. 3 minus 3 is 0. Check. Can I do 1 divided by 12? No, so I need to bring down the 2. Now I divide 12 divided by 12 is 1 because 1 times 12 is 12. So now I need to multiply. 1 times 12 is 12. Subtract 0 and 0. Check. 0 divided by 12, can't do, and I have nothing to bring down. So my answer is 3 and 1/10. Let's look at another. 1 and 96 hundredths divided by 14 hundredths. So in this problem, I need to first multiply the divisor by a power of 10 to make it a whole number. So I need to move my decimal point 1 time, 2 times. I need to actually move it 2 times. So because I moved it 2 times to the right, that meant I was multiplying by 100 because I have 2 zeros. Those 2 zeros are telling me I'm moving it twice because I need my divisor to be a whole number. So now step 2, second, multiply the dividend by the same power of 10 that you did for the divisor. Well, I multiplied it by 100, so I'm going to multiply this side by 100, which means I need to move the decimal point once, twice. So now I have 196. So now I can solve it as a normal division problem. So I'm going to put my new dividend underneath 196, and then on the outside, my divisor, my 14. And I don't have any decimal points to bring up. So now I can just solve it like normal. I can say 1 divided by 14? Nope. So I'm going to look at 19. 19 divided by 14 will be 1. Put my 1 right above the 9 since I'm looking at 19. Now I multiply. 1 times 14 is 14. Subtract. I get 5 and 0. Check. 5 divided by 14, can't do. So I need to bring down the 6. So now I need to ask myself, 14 times what number gets me close to 56? So I'm going to say, I'm going to do some work over here. 14, let's try 3. Well, that's 12. That's 42. Too small. What about 14 times 4? 4 times 4 is 16. So that would be 56. That works. So I'm going to put my 4 on the top, right above, because that's where I'm working with. Now I multiply 4 times 14, and that gives me 56. And I subtract, which gives me 0. So now I can check. Can I do 0 divided by 14? I cannot. Do I have anything to bring down? I do not. So my answer is 14. Let's do one more. 84 hundredths divided by 7 hundredths. First step, multiply the divisor by a power of 10 to make it a whole number. So I need to move my decimal point 1 time, 2 times to make it a whole number. So because I moved my decimal point twice, I know my power of 10 has to have 2 zeros. So that would mean that I'm multiplying this by 100. So now my new divisor is a 7. So step 2 is multiply the dividend, this 84 hundredths, by the exact same power of 10 that you did for your divisor. So I moved my decimal point 2 times, well, because I multiplied it by 100. So I'm going to move my decimal point 2 times here. Because what I do to my divisor, I do to my dividend. So now that I moved it 2 times, my new dividend is 84. So now when I set up my division problem, I put my dividend underneath, my 84, and I put my divisor 7 on the outside. And I have no decimals to bring up. So I just have whole numbers. So I'm going to divide normally. 8 divided by 7 would be 1 time. Because 1 times 7 is 7. Subtract. Get 1. Bring down your 4. Check. We should have checked beforehand. Could I have done 1 divided by 7? No. So I brought down my 4. So now I'm thinking 14 divided by 7. Well, that's a math fact. That would be 2. Now I multiply 2 times 7 is 14. Subtract. And I get 0. And I check. Can I do 0 divided by 7? No. Do I have anything to bring down? No. So I know my answer is 12.